And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Welcome back. It is officially MLS offseason. Officially kicks off. Welcome back to another edition of the Toronto Till I Die podcast, the Toronto FC fan show. And it's Michael Singh. I am back from a little bit of a hiatus, but I missed you guys. No Mike Newell on today's episode, but we do got my main man here, Jeffrey P. Nesker, as usual. And it's always, I would say, one of my favorite episodes in Toronto Till I Die, when we get the opportunity to be graced by the presence of the one and only Rachel Dory. Really looking forward to your insight. Rach, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I sound a bit like Batman, so there's a little bit of that, but I mean, I'm fired up. It's the off season. There is all manner of work to be done in TFC land, so I feel like it's honestly probably like the perfect episode to like be on because there's just like so much stuff to talk about.
I feel like this is like the moment Toronto FC fans have been waiting for months now, because we all knew the season was virtually over come August, come September. Definitely knew it was over
Even
by
knew
that
in
point.
May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
You know, we
so I
didn't
think,
know when we did the over-unders. That's when we didn't know. But anytime after that is we knew.
I still can't believe how bad those were. But yeah, this has been the moment I think a lot of TFC fans have been waiting for. So there's a lot of work for Toronto FC to do this offseason. We laid it out. We'll get into that shortly. We'll also recap this weekend's MLS Cup final. We'll provide the latest and possibly final Sebastian Giovinco update. And then we'll also get to the burning question presented by Nextdoor with a special holiday treat for our listeners. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that one. Let's start though.
Oh yeah, I do. Okay.
Yeah, you do know about the treat, right?
Okay,
right. Yeah. Sorry, I missed that meeting. Whatever.
Okay, let's start with MLS Cup final, because that was obviously what happened most recently. Tim Bezbatchenko, let's not bury the lead. The man does it again. The former Toronto FC man does it again. His second MLS Cup title since leaving Toronto FC. And this one was, I mean, you could make the argument it could have been even more impressive than his last MLS Cup final. You got to remember, Columbus sold Lucas De La Reyan mid-season, replacing him eventually with Diego Rossi. But to lose a player of that stature, your number 10, your most important player at that point, hands down, mid-season, and still be able to absorb that blow and push forward and go on to get hot at the right time and really take it to an LAFC team who, quite frankly, they look like the inferior side throughout that contest. So I got to give full credit to Columbus, to Tim Bezbatchenko and the roster that he created. But more importantly, I got to give some credit to Tim Bezbatchenko for the decision that he made to bring on Wilfred Nancy as head coach.
Damn.
I mean, talk about something that's paid dividends, right, Jeff?
Absolutely. I mean, your first question, this has to be more meaningful than the 2020 MLS Cup. Obviously, a star on the crest is important, but that was the wacky COVID season. You know, we were playing in Connecticut for some of it and almost won the Shield. So, yeah, just by nature of this being a more proper season, you have to think this one is more meaningful. Tears. I mean, what could have been, right? I don't like this easy narrative that's sort of circulating around TFC land that, like, you know, the only thing standing in Bez's way for remaining was Bill Manning. I do think there was a pull for him to go to his hometown. You know, that can't be undervalued. So that's kind of bothering me a little bit. Would I love to have him back? Absolutely. You know, can we attract him with big money and fabulous prizes again? Absolutely. But yeah, I that reductionist history kind of pissed me off.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that it's not just Tim Bezbatchenko, right? You have a lot of other staff that Tim Bezbatchenko drew to Columbus, some important staff for that team at this point in time, that has really established that foundation, that culture there. A lot of the culture, honestly, that we used to have. Now, would it be the
Mhm.
same if Tim Bezbatchenko simply stayed with TFC and, Corey Race simply stayed with TFC and some of the other people as well? It's hard to say, right? It's
Yeah, it's
not,
hard to speculate.
it doesn't work quite like that. But Rachel, you obviously have, I'm sure, some tremendous insight about Tim Bezbatchenko. Just your thoughts on him capturing his second MLS Cup there with Columbus.
Yeah, I would say super happy for him. Like to win, generally speaking, is incredible. To win in your hometown and to do it in the
Mhm.
manner that he did. Like you talked about it off the top, like losing your best player, well, like actively selling your best player and kind of like the turmoil that launches your team into, and then to be able to go on and win, like TFC could never dream of that. But I look at it and it's like that guy clearly knows what he's doing, and there was that power struggle between Bill and Bez, and ultimately it cost TFC Bez, it cost them Greg Benny, it cost them so many people that were in the organization at the key moments. And I think less about the moves, more about the culture that Bez brought. Uh, was super important. Like he was the guy that was always there, he was always present, always making sure like everyone's on the same page, everyone's moving in the same direction, everyone has a piece to play. Like he made everyone feel important.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of that is now no longer there. Now it's like I'm important.
Hmm.
It's about me, and like it's just not the best. And do I think that TFC would have been able to retain him with the pull of Columbus? No. Against any other
Yeah.
club? Yes, absolutely. Now, I'm sure if you went to Bez and said, here's a $5 million salary, he might think twice about it. But I mean, bringing Wilfred Nancy in, like that took stones. And obviously selling Lucas Zelarayan, that also took stones, but that's the kind of stuff that you have to be bold. And
Yep.
he's been bold, and it's well-researched boldness, and it's paid off on multiple occasions. And I think you kind of have to look at this and go, this is the perfect example of somebody who has a really good feel for what's going on, but also uses the tools at his disposal to make informed decisions.
I can't agree more. I mean, we often talk about how different the league is now than it was in 2017, sometimes to insulate ourselves from tears. But like, here's a
I'm
guy,
crying already.
honestly, yeah, but I mean, here's a guy that's like did it then and is doing it now. So he's obviously not just figured it out, but is evolving as the league evolves. You know what I mean? Like, do you think Tim? And this is a crazy question, but do you think he's prouder of MLS Cup 2017 with TFC, young buck getting it done, or now, sort of veteran with less budget getting it done in a much more competitive league? I think maybe I just answered my own question.
I think it's got to be this year. One, your hometown. Two, yeah, more competitive league. Like, I mean, let's face it. Like, yeah, doing the TFC one, like that was impressive because like that was kind of that brought the club out of basically oblivion.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
but now you're in a league that's seen. I mean, if I tilt my screen upwards, you'll see jerseys from MLS that don the names of like Ibrahimovic, Messi, Schweinsteiger. Like
Yeah.
there's more, like it's a more difficult league to play in. And I think one of the more underrated moves that he made, and Michael, you could probably talk about this, is Darlington Nagbe. Like
Oh,
bringing that
please.
guy on.
My God.
Like
What
it's just
a
a stroke
player.
of genius, is it not?
Yeah.
That just kind of
Mhm.
shows that he really knows what you need to win in this league.
Yeah, definitely. Darlington Nagbe just straight up wins. And
Yep.
he's, despite him getting up there in age, he's still very important, a very important piece of that team. But, it kind of goes to like a bigger point overall of what Columbus has managed to do with its somewhat limited budget, right?
Mhm.
When you look at
Hell,
their
they weren't even going to
salaries.
be there like 4 years ago. I mean, they were
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
move. Yeah.
No, yeah, and then you couple that with, like, just their spend this year. They're middle of the pack, right? They're not blowing a bunch of money. Sure, they've spent money on Cucho Hernandez, they've spent money on Diego Rossi, but those are, like, mid-level MLS free agent, maybe at the exception of Cucho is maybe slightly higher, But
Mm.
that's some savvy business when it comes to identifying DPs at the right age, the right type of profiles, and DPs that could overall just succeed in Major League Soccer at a good value. Where you look at, again, we always relate this back to TFC. We look at TFC and who they've spent their money on, much more
Mhm.
money on, a much bigger budget on, and look what they've been able to accomplish. So that's another lesson I think TFC can take from this Columbus winning team. And it's like, man, if they can do it with that budget, imagine what Toronto FC should be able to do with the budget that they have. But
I'm going to
let's
press you
pivot back to
further,
TFC.
Mike.
Yeah,
Hold on. I'm
go.
going to press you further because do you think how much of this do you put on Wilfred Nancy? I mean, you've probably written them. I've read so many articles over the last couple of days where to a man they're saying, what? I think my favorite was Sam Piet said when they got rid of Nancy and they got rid of Lasada that we want someone like Nancy in because it was fun to play for that guy. Like, so you get this impression, this guy really is a really good man manager. I mean, he's tactically astute, but he's also a really relatable guy that people want to run through walls for. Is that the secret sauce? I mean, there's parallels to Vanny when we summited the mountaintop. Like, is that really it? Like, is it as simple as a coach with that kind of a personality to sort of bring all these misfit toys together under the flag and banner of their side and storm the mountaintops? I mean, I don't know.
No, well, I think that's a great point. And Caleb Porter, for all that he's accomplished in this league, I got to give a lot of credit to, again, Bezbatchenko for identifying Nancy as Columbus's next coach. I mean, they moved on this really early. He was still under contract with Montreal at the time. And then
Yeah, they got
reports
wind of that
surfaced.
argument and they swooped in there like crazy.
They were, he was unemployed for 35 seconds. Like,
Yeah, even while he was employed, they were kicking tires at Wilfred Nancy, right? So for them to identify him as an excellent coach, and something I've talked about really a lot was just how much that 2022 Montreal team was overperforming at the time based
They're
on
unbelievable.
the roster that they had.
Yeah.
Right. They're so good for, again, the quality of players that they had on their roster. So yeah, credit to Columbus for identifying Nancy. Is it just well for Nancy? Probably not. Is he playing such an important role for that team? Yeah, because you look at what Cucho Hernandez did for that team in 2022 when he first came over from Watford, I believe it was. And he was not the type of player that he looks like right now. So, I mean, some credit has to be given for that, and to be able, again, to absorb that blow of Zelleran, to really put some more trust and instill some more trust in a kid like Aiden Morris. He's getting the best out of his players and his best out of his group, and they're a cohesive unit. And yeah, I think that right now that's something TFC can only aspire to.
Yeah, and you have to then tie that to, Bez works really well with youngish, tactically astute, really ambitious coaches. And they seem to be a match made in heaven because they kind of mirror each other. And that leads to really exciting football. I mean, Columbus play a very exciting, very entertaining brand of, attacking football where players are allowed to express themselves. It's visually appealing. You can't go wrong.
I feel like
they're winning.
TFC that might not work because the players that TFC currently have maybe express themselves too much on occasion or too often, actually, if we're being honest. Maybe they need to dial that all the way down. Like,
I
was just going to quickly say, you mentioned like Greg Vanney there. I saw a stat floating around Twitter where Greg Vanney's record with Tim Bezbatchenko roster versus Greg Vanney's record without a Tim Bezbatchenko roster, and it's ugly. And it's ugly. So yeah,
are you upset that
combination of both?
Mismanagement, and I'm talking Joey Saputo here, basically robs us of Wilfred Nancy, because he had such ties to Quebec soccer, such ties to the CF Montreal infrastructure, and one dust up with that with Mr. Cheeseman, and he's basically south of the border forever. It doesn't bother you?
Well, there's no us. There's no us with CF Montreal. I'm happy.
Well, I'm
I'm
just
There's no us in
saying he's an
Vancouver. There's no
important.
us in Montreal. There's no us.
Well, there
I'm
is when
happy.
you widen the mosaic to include Canada, and that was what I was doing. You don't feel it's a loss for Canada that somebody dropped the ball, and now we won't get to enjoy.
No, Montreal can
Nancy.
finish last for
Yep.
the rest of
Yeah.
eternity.
I mean,
and
you're right. I
be
think his pathway
thrilled.
is always going to be Europe, right? This guy may be the next major North American export to Europe on the coaching side.
I mean,
All
he's definitely on
thinking in
track.
that direction. Well, he's
I
just
mean-
so idiosyncratic, and that's what European teams love. They love coaches that are easily understood. Like that's why Jesse Marsh got such legway, like a cult of personality. Herdman's very much of that ilk, like somebody who it's what's written on the box. You know what you're going to get with Wilfred Nancy and his kind of teams. And I think a few more years.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about Wilfred Nancy is like I actually think that Canada Soccer has missed an opportunity with him.
Not yet. I don't. His trajectory. I think it's a lateral move at best to go to Canada Soccer right now to coach.
No, but I'm saying like I think Canada's like instead of going to Columbus, like that was the moment where Canada Soccer could have swooped in.
That's
potentially.
a very fair point.
And now like he's absolutely going to get a shot in Europe, and he absolutely should. And I mean, like Canada Soccer is just such a mess that somebody like Wilfred Nancy could have been really, really good for them. And now it's like it's a hope and a prayer that Carlo Ancelotti just like bumps.
Did you see? He was wearing a Canada tracky top, dude. I'm convinced. Like,
it's like the Ohtani plane to Toronto all over.
But you know what I mean? It's like I feel like you talk about missed opportunity. Like Montreal, as far as I'm concerned, can pound salt. But in terms of coaching the national team,
you're right. I think when these guys are coming through the ranks, whether they're playing in the pan US Canada League or not, they're still Canadian talent. We're not recognizing Canadian talent. I think that's entirely a fair.
That's totally fair. All right.
Yeah. Speaking of the Ohtani deal, okay, we have Rachel here.
Talk.
I need someone to explain this to me. I know I'm going right off right now, but like he's deferring $68 million a year for 10 years. Isn't that tax fraud? Is that not tax evasion? I mean, to say nothing like, please explain it to me because I have questions.
Yeah, it's one of these explain it to me like I'm five situations. So there is a rule in the MLB CBA that something tells me that this contract is going to cause a lockout in 2026. This
is the competitive balance tax, right? Because they're only getting a cap hit of like $2 million.
Shohei Ohtani is being paid $2 million per season for 10 seasons. And the Dodgers are, because they aren't actually paying him the actual money, one, he's only going to get taxed on $2 million, and then when he goes back to Japan, they're going to pay the rest of that, and so California is also missing out on all of that tax money. And it allows the Dodgers to be competitive in the window that they have him. So basically, there's no excuse
violation
for them
of the rule.
Yeah,
I mean, this is dancing around it. Also, he knows inflation exists, right? Like it's going to be worth much less 10 years from now.
I think $460 million 10 years from now is going to be just fine. I think he'll manage.
Yeah. Yeah, but this deal is so cutthroat.
No, he's doing it. So he's essentially doing it so the team can also surround him with better pieces. Exactly. Right. It's the Michael Bradley. It's the Michael Bradley, but on a way bigger scale.
Michael Bradley never made the GDP of most countries. Like this
exactly.
TFC
I'm the rest of baseball.
Sweet dick all with that money.
Yeah. True enough. Yeah. If I'm the rest of baseball, I'm so super pissed. I can't even. I'm so super pissed. And do you think that the reason that the Jays never got it over the line is Canadian tax laws or actual tax laws as opposed to the Mickey Mouse stuff in California that he's pulling these shenanigans on? No,
I think that CAA used the Blue Jays and they used their client Robert Herjavec and they I mean, everything that everyone I've spoken to within baseball, outside of baseball, like kind of in and around the situation.
That is a spicy meatball.
Everything was kind of like this was a ploy by CAA, and Morosi got absolutely screwed on it. And I think that that's probably the worst part of all of this. You can be disappointed that Ohtani is not in Toronto. I got to be honest though, if that contract came out and it was with a Blue Jay signature on it, I'd be like, hey, that's not good. Like that's ugly.
Yeah, that's ugly. Yeah,
That's bad. Like it's brutal. But
Mikey's
yeah,
like, I don't
everything
care. I don't care. He's still gonna hit. He's still
Yeah,
gonna
like
hit all those dingers. Like, I
yeah,
don't care.
there's no,
everything
it's not even
seems to
about him on the field. I
everything
think
seems
the
to
value would have
point
been
at the fact that this was a ploy by CAA. And
Hmm.
sure, I mean, you could say it's good agenting, but that's bad business practices, man. Like
Yeah, it's
that's
bad. It's
really
very.
bad business
Yeah,
practices.
it's predatory. It's really, really
Oh yeah,
predatory, and you're
yeah,
costing somebody
salty.
potentially their career. So yeah, it's not a good thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
salty Toronto fan for sure here. But let's shift things over TFC.
Yeah.
Let's
This is a
talk
soccer
some.
podcast, but I needed to know, guys. I've been looking at
No,
the
no,
tweets
no.
all day and go,
Honestly, that's been the
what is
topic I
this?
think everyone's
Yeah.
cared about for the last week and a half. To be honest, really, really fun to follow. It's been a
Mm.
really entertaining week. Just
Oh, it's been awesome.
really bitter ending in just perfect Toronto fashion. Why does it always happen to Toronto?
Mhm.
Okay, so other thing I just want to quickly actually just touch on before we get to TFC. We can sum it
Mm.
up very quickly. A minute each. Christine Sinclair playing her last
Thank you.
final game for the Canadian women's national team. Just any words on the feeling of watching her play her final game in a Canada shirt? It almost feels surreal for me.
Mm.
I almost don't believe it. I'm like, gosh,
Yeah.
she's gonna come back.
Yeah. I mean, thank goodness that she still got a year in Portland, so it wasn't like a crushing finality. Like this is the last time we'll see her on a ball kicking it in anger, but or on a pitch kicking a ball in anger. I thought they did her really right. She was obviously very uncomfortable under the spotlight. They minimized it for her benefit, but you have to celebrate this, and I think she realized that and kind of leaned into it.
Yeah.
I think the only complaint is I wish to every God you believe in that she could have gotten one more goal that game, and I understand the significance of subbing her off at the 12th minute of the second half, and that had been pre-planned for the exchange with Sophie Schmidt, so they both get their flowers, but would have loved to have seen her score a goal. That's my only regret there.
Rach, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the greatest goal scorer in international soccer. I mean, she's got more goals than Messi, Ronaldo. Like,
Yep.
it's what she's done for soccer in this country. Like, it can't even be overstated. Like, there are players that look up to her that are little boys, and so often it's little girls looking up to boys because the boys are playing professionally. But the reality is up until a couple of years ago, the only really notable star we had was a Canadian woman. And yes, we have Alphonso Davies and Tajon Buchanan and a bunch now. But to be honest, Canada soccer doesn't exist to the extent that it does without Christine Sinclair. And so I think a lot of them owe her an enormous a debt of gratitude for what she's done for this country. And as far as I'm concerned, like, there had better be multiple soccer pitches across the nation named after her. If we're talking about awarding soccer scholarships, they better have her name on it. Like, she is everything on and off the pitch you could ever hope for in a Canadian athlete.
100%. I think that sums it up very nicely. Like, even me, when I was growing up playing soccer, the one Canadian you could always turn on the TV and be like in awe of, absolute awe, was Christine Sinclair. Always look forward to her matches. She, like Rach said, she really was the trailblazer for Canadian soccer and set the tone in so many different ways and established the foundation. She is literally the person who built Canada soccer to the point where it is today. So, like I said, it's almost surreal because she's just been such a ever omnipresent
Can
part
TFC
of our
hire her to maybe
lives.
teach some people how to score? Because I feel like, she's sort of an expert in that subject.
Expert at it. Yeah. There's enormous pressure now. We all feel it because we have to honor that legacy. We had we had time to like fester, but now she's gone, and it's time to get serious about the legacy that she's created. And it sort of puts into sharper focus the mess that the federation's in, right? And so there's no perfect time to leave, but there's this bittersweet feeling because you always, just like it would have been so nice for her to walk off, selling a goal, and she didn't. It would be so nice if she walked off and this federation felt like it was in a better place, but it doesn't. And so there's that.
And it's not her fault either.
and it's not her fault either. And I have enormous faith that as she enters the private sector, she's going to be an enormous contributor to the Project 8 and all the other endeavors that are going on. So I'm not worried about that. And in some ways, I think that the kind of iffiness of the exit, the less than positive parts, will be fuel towards improving that situation as she moves forward in where her post soccer career takes her. But yeah.
We could do a full episode. We could do a full episode on Christine Sinclair, to be completely honest with you.
Unbelievable goal scorer. Some of the stuff I've seen her do, just unbelievable.
Yeah, we got to move it along here. So some TFC talk now. So as I mentioned off the bat, the MLS offseason officially kicks off, and this morning the MLS trade window opened. So we did see some roster moves, most notably, I think, from a TFC perspective. We saw Raheem Edwards, former TFC guy, one of our very own, traded to, or should I say back to, CF Montreal.
Yeah, back to.
From the LA Galaxy for just a small sum of general allocation money. I won't comment too much on that trade, but I do think that it could be a potentially smart bit of business for, I think, both teams. I think it was both time for Raheem to move on from LA, and also Montreal get I would say, a good Canadian. He's not young anymore. He's probably right in his
28.
prime years, but a guy who's
28.
established himself as a really solid left back in this league. So good savvy move by both parties. TFC are not yet active, which I think is not a surprise given, what do they have left to trade? The only thing I could think of that would really be worth something from a non-player perspective is they have some cap space, which is cool. Yeah,
they got some.
They also got the first overall pick, right? And I think that's something we're all going to be watching for to see exactly what.
Can't
TFC
wait for them
does.
to draft some dude because they didn't scout properly. And my hope is that with Sean Rubio at the helm, that is not the case. But
that's a serious hope. Yeah.
It's extraordinarily funny that I turned on my television last night to watch a TFC super draft pick kicking for the Dallas Cowboys.
That's never not going to be amazing. Yep.
He's also
and that was when I was with the team too. It's funny as heck.
Yeah. Dallas Cowboys kicker, by the way.
Brandon Aubrey.
Yep.
Brandon Aubrey. But I think you make a good point, Michael, in that that first overall pick is the key piece that you have here. And I'm seeing people be I'm seeing a discussion online of should they sell it? Should they? No, they should not. This team has tried transfer market and big European transfers, and it has not worked. What works for teams? Well, the New York Red Bull were fantastic for a really long time, and they developed guys like Caden Clark, right? You look at Columbus, they don't have these flashy European signings. They draft well, they use their TAM and GAM, and they make smart designated player signings. I think you have an opportunity here to get the best player in college soccer, and you should be doing absolutely nothing but finding out who the best player is and then selecting that player.
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong. It's also a wider class this year. They get to choose.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. So one thing you got to be really cautious of, and I think TFC fans got to temper their expectations a little bit here. The first overall pick this year can be drafted from a younger class. So it's not just typically seniors and Generation Adidas players that are now eligible for the draft. It's now players all the way down to, I believe, their sophomore year that could be eligible for the draft. So yeah, TFC could be really investing here in a player that, might not be in a way ready to step into the league, but they're drafting in terms of highest potential, which I think is the route that they have to go. There's always in drafts, it's always, do you draft on highest potential? Do you draft on most ready? Do you draft on positional need? For me, I think TFC got to go with the highest potential here, because they got to restock the cabinet when it comes to some of their younger players. And this is a really easy, efficient way to do that.
And I think also you bring up like he might not be ready. The reality is like I would go with what you said, Michael, on highest potential. And it might not be the worst thing if that kid's not ready, because the absolute last place that kid probably needs to be is in that locker room right now. They need, as far as I'm concerned, they need to clean up that mess before they inject any youth in there whatsoever, because all you're going to do is wreck them if they have to kind of deal with whatever the heck is going on in there. So I don't think it would be the worst thing if that player is not ready to step into that locker room, because boy howdy, it doesn't seem like it's a great place to be right now.
Fair. That's a fair point. It's a fair point.
No, that brings me to kind of where I wanted to go next. In terms of,
they signed a fetus because that's the potential. They signed a fetus that's excellent two-way player.
Is that the timeline until the locker room gets cleaned out, or I mean, that seems to be when Lorenzo and Federico's contracts will expire. But actually, let's get into that. So, in terms of biggest off-season priorities, Rach, what do you see as number one, number two? I'm guessing I know the answer.
Yeah, you need to sort out what's happening in that locker room, and you need to take a blowtorch to anything that isn't. I look at it this way. You're building a team now. We're building a club. If the name on the back of the jersey supersedes the crest on the front, you're out. You're gone. And if you cannot get in line and buy that, John Herdman needs to show them the door. I don't care if you're Lorenzo Insigne or Federico Bernardeschi. If you think you are more important than the club, you are gone, because that is how a major European team would act. And if TFC wants to be taken with any level of seriousness, that is how they have to conduct their business. So if you don't fit with John Herdman's culture, priority 1, 2, and 3 has to be you're out. You're gone. That's it.
Yeah, I think that ship sailed in terms of like, oh, I'm Lorenzo Insigne and Federico Bernardeschi. I can do this, and that, because hey, guess what? You were part of the problem that we endured in terms of getting us through.
Endured is a very good word.
The worst season in club history, one of the worst seasons in Major League Soccer history, and the only way
some of the worst soccer I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, and the only way you can get away with that, Jeff, is just because they're better than everyone else and they can, produce results. Hey, guess what though? You got your chance. It's been a year and a half. You haven't produced results. You got to either, as Leif said, get in line or get out the door.
I mean, it's already coming out in the chat, because listen, we're all in agreement, but how do you get rid of someone making 15 million,
you bench
locked
them
into a contract?
If you have to.
Are you kidding? There's an entire Saudi, there's an entire part of the world that's paying players of this caliber to do this.
And why? Well, then let's get on the phone. We can help move this along.
Yeah,
can we help? I'll volunteer. Jeff, are you in?
No, I'm in. I'm absolutely in. I mean, at this point, I'm a little sad because I was gonna start a GoFundMe to keep Victor on the books, and they didn't want to listen to me. So now, but listen, look. Let's the elephant in the room. This is today. Lorenzo Insigne was given a Coney Medal of Valor for Italy's winning the Euro in 2020. It's a bit late, but all right. He then spoke on his future. I'll finish my contract in Toronto because my family and I are fine there. The dream of the national team remains, but I accept coach's choices. It's just okay. Yay! I'm gonna go buy 8 of your shirts. You'll stay there because it's comfortable. That's the last thing I want to hear from the $15 million man.
No.
And I don't want to talk about lost in translation. Well, maybe he was effusive in his original mother tongue. Maybe that still got out there. I don't.
Jeff, we can't take them at their word anymore. We probably couldn't take them at their word ever. Because they know how to play the media, know how to play the press. And the one thing that was really telling was Federico Bernardeschi saying in his end of season presser how committed he was essentially to Toronto FC, and then that video
until he got to Torino, yeah,
telling a fan he would like to come back to Juventus. we know what the deal is at this point when it comes to, I'd say, the Italians and the way that they use the media, speak to the media. They're well media trained when it comes to telling
There's
you.
It's interesting that you say bench. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
I was going to say there's one Italian that's actually, I believe, truly wanted to play for this club.
Do not jump the queue. We got a lot to talk about before we
but
get
that's
to
what I'm
that.
saying. It's like at least like when you talk about Insigne and Bernardeschi, and I think Mimo's a little bit different, but I'm also not going to get into the stuff that I know about behind the scenes because that's just going to get a lot of people in trouble. I think if you look at it, Seba has entrenched himself here. Like, he still lives here. So regardless of what he says about anything else, he clearly loves the city of Toronto and he loves the club. And I think at a minimum, the three of us can agree that the same cannot be said for any of the other Italians who have graced the presence here. But when you look at it, what needs to be done, you have an armband to give out. And I think there's a logical player that goes to. And I think losing a guy like Richie Larea was a big mistake because that is another guy that bled for the club, that loves the club. His family's entrenched here. And like, you messed that up. And he was a guy where he never cheated you for effort. Also never cheats you for effort. You need guys that are willing to do that. I don't care if TFC isn't good next year. I care that the 11 guys that are on the pitch are giving it 100% for the crest, because outside of that, it's just not going to be acceptable. Like, that's got to be the bare minimum here. And if you can't do that, you aren't playing. I don't care how much money you aren't playing.
We agree, but I'm just trying to speak pragmatically. Like, do you think Herdman's got the cojones to bench them? Do you think the MLSE board is going to let those players fester on the pine?
Well, listen,
I mean,
that's something we got to watch for, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we all agree, and we've been screaming to the mountaintops that something needs to be done, but we are incredibly limited in what can be done here. And that's the real issue here, right? Like,
well, if Rogers was going to pony up for Shohei Ohtani, Rogers partially owns MLSE. You can go pony up for somebody else. Or better yet, how about you pony up on a bunch of staff so that you can have an appropriate scouting department so that we avoid Jefferson Soteldo situations going forward?
Yeah, I mean, this to me is just one of the same. The recruitment of Jefferson begat this recruitment, and I see a definite path from one to the other. The beginning of the end, so to speak. But yeah, I just, I share all your points. I see the futility in it, because for every answer, there's an equal and opposite reason why it won't be done, which leads to the same old, trotting these guys out to like sit around and pace and walk and then say it's everybody else's fault. So yeah, also going.
What do you think? What do you think they're actually going to do, Michael? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess that's
actually going to happen here
with the Italians.
With TFC in general, like, what is the team that we are all going to be force-fed come March?
That's one way of putting it. Okay, well, let me just highlight a couple of key dates here, which I think might give some of the answers in terms of what I'm thinking. So the end of year waivers are tomorrow, beginning at 5 p.m. Eastern. The MLS free agency officially opens on December 13th, so clubs can start to engage with players who are out of contract and they're eligible for free agency. So essentially, players who are 24 years of age and have a minimum of 5 service years. And then on Thursday is everybody's favorite draft, the MLS reentry draft, stage 1. So that is going down Thursday. And then the super draft on December 19th, followed by stage 2 of the reentry process on December 21st. So this window, TFC are going to be incredibly busy. I think they're going to be real active players in the reentry drafts. I think that's a way that they believe that they can identify some value. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're fairly active there. I also expect them to be kind of big players when it comes to free agency. I think they've learned from the point of view where you can't overpay for certain players, But when you look at a guy like Sean Johnson, for example, that's a stud that you got in free agency. Matt Hedges, his contract wasn't the greatest, but still a good player that you were able to identify in MLS free agency. They need more of MLS caliber players who, like Rach said, are just 100% bought in, and they have something to play for. They're not coming over here from Europe thinking they're better than everyone else. They're playing for their next contract. So you got to
Mhm.
still fill your roster out with some of those pieces. Um,
I mean, someone like a Jacob Schaffelberg who would look great in a TFC uniform. How do we get one of those?
yeah, exactly. Exactly, which is why I say they don't really have much trade commodity left. So
No.
I really think they're going to fill their roster out with young, hungry players who are of the age of their mid-20s. I think they identified they need to fill more
Amazing.
of those players.
Lorenzo and
But we'll
Fed are
see.
going to love those guys. They're going to love playing with those guys. That's going to be amazing.
Well, I mean, this is a John Herman roster now too, right? So you have to
Mhm.
also get players who play in the 3-5-2, and they have to use the months that they had, and now their months moving forward to identify which players actually fit that mold and which players don't fit that mold. So
Mhm.
yeah, we'll see exactly just how that progresses. One player that we know for a fact won't be fitting that mold was Sebastian Giovinco. Is Sebastian Giovinco? Seba taking to Instagram yesterday or the day before to let everybody know that he won't be returning to Toronto FC in 2024 and that it was not his decision. He also says he still remains fully committed to the club, fully committed to Toronto FC, but is
Free towels and saunas.
obviously
It's amazing.
but it's obviously disappointed not to get at least like an invite to training camp come 2024. Let's talk about, like, I guess on a surface level of this news. Anybody surprised at all that it ended up going this route? Writing was
Nope.
pretty much on the wall, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty straightforward answer. I see a lot of discourse on Twitter and within some of the comments about Sebastian Giovinco being better than our current striker situation. Which, okay, fair, like maybe
The bar is also on the
actually,
pole.
yeah, maybe you actually might have a
Yeah,
case
yeah.
there, but
Yeah.
but
Is
it's
he better
not.
than Adama Diamande?
Yeah,
Potentially, yeah. Yeah.
but I
He
think if
plays.
Is that like the flex that you think it is? Absolutely not.
yeah, yeah, I don't think he was a solution for this team whatsoever. Is he a feel good type of player that you could brought in to make the fans somewhat happy? Yeah. And to some extent, I'm surprised they didn't take that route.
They didn't do it.
Because
There was a perfect time to do it. They missed the window. Now it's over.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even if he doesn't play, just to have him on the roster, play him a couple minutes at the end of the game or not every game,
Mhm.
but some games, right?
Such a massive opportunity back in the tail end of last season under Terry Duncan.
But fair enough. They want to move forward. And I think
Mhm.
nobody should really have an issue with that, given that Seba played a total of 2 games over the last 2 years. His return came out of nowhere, out of the blue. But what about Seba's, I guess, decision to go about this publicly and announce it himself? I think that's kind of been Seba's move, really, over the
Yeah,
years.
that's par
And
for
we
the
want him
course with
back.
Seba.
We're trying to get that kind of attitude out of the club, and then people are clamoring for him to come back. I mean, this guy goes to social media before he goes to his agent. He's a loose cannon. Like, that's the last thing we need, to say nothing about presumed skills on the pitch, right? This was a
Well,
problem that we
yeah.
had with him on the way out, and just because he's stroking our member berries doesn't excuse the insubordination. It's still insubordination, right? It's just cute insubordination, supposed to mean insubordination.
Yeah, sure. Like,
But it
I
still
don't
is
think
what
it's
it is.
I don't think it's the end of the world. Like, he's a player who's not in contract with the team, not doing anything malicious, just saying that he's not going to be back with TFC in 2024.
I
Like, I
mean,
don't
how
think
can you
there's
say that's not malicious? He's trying to wrestle up his pitchfork mob, to get Star Trek uncanceled, basically. Like, it is an appeal, but it is an appeal to the, look at the way it's written. My
Sure.
fans, my supporters, right? Like, I love Seba. I do. I love him, and I would have loved to have seen him come back to make that excruciating end run of last season a little bit more tolerable. I was all for it. and a little bit of it was Schadenfreude because I wanted some of these people on the socials to actually see what they were fighting for out there on the pitch, tripping over his own feet, trying is that a night myopia kicking in and not able to discern if it's a ball or if it's another player. But that's over now. And it's a shame that this is the way it ends with the same kind of, this team doesn't have the what was it, the hunger for winning that I enjoyed over in Italy, like the same nasty barbs. It's a shame. But it's proven the pudding that, at the end of the day, he's got an agenda. What he wants sometimes aligns with the club, and that's great. And we enjoy things. But when they don't, watch out, because he's going to go and besmirch you or put himself in, create a narrative where he's the victim complex. We're already doing that with two very expensive designated players. Like, I don't, if Seba coming back means more of that, like, bye-bye. There's a Zaza really far up north that you should go live at. So you're like real far away. Like, we don't need it. We don't need it. In pretty much every respect, we don't need it.
I think from TFC's perspective,
it hurts.
It's like time for TFC to take out a restraining order. Well, like that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like, okay, TFC, I can appreciate them bringing him back for yet another time to see if he's got anything, I guess, left in the tank. But at the same time, I mean, we kind of know what's happening there. Like, if it didn't work a year ago when you brought him back in January to training camp, him not playing for a year straight year and a half straight, how is he going to be better than when he was back when you originally brought him?
Spoiler alert, he's not.
Sure. Different manager at the helm at the time, but to be honest, TFC didn't even have a manager at the time when they brought him back. So I almost think TFC's, the way that they've gone about this, probably in hindsight, is not the best way. And to go about it publicly in the way that they went about it, not the best way. And for all parties, it just ends now in a bitter feeling. And I think, yeah, exactly. There's got to be a way for TFC, I guess, to overall just commemorate Seba in a better way and fix this, and not necessarily fix this in terms of bringing him back as a player, but just find ways to honor his legacy, because he's so important to what he means to Toronto FC. And he really is. I mean, you talk about Christine Sinclair about being the GOAT for Canadian soccer. Seba right now is the GOAT when it comes to Toronto FC and this club. So there's got to be a better way to, I guess, honor his legacy here as potentially his career wraps up.
I mean, it does take two to tango. I think it's important to mention it takes two to tango, and to lay this all at the feet of TFC when we've just spent 5 minutes talking about his ability and impetus to do an end run around TFC comms and just post whatever he wants. Like, maybe the answer is the club needs to be a bit more brutal with how we deal with people. Maybe some of our elite talent get far too comfortable here and then start thinking that they can do things that are outside the purview of at another club such as Juve, because we're a bit softer, and that's why it's so messy on the way out, kind of thing.
And I think that's the difference between Michael and Josie Seba, right? Is Michael maintained the Roma sort of conduct.
Composure. Yeah.
Here. Yeah. And I mean, I think it was a mistake to not bring Seba back last year because, like you said, couple minutes at the end of the game, their strikers weren't scoring anyway, so it's not like he could have been worse. Like, 0 goals is not worse than 0 goals. So at least you have the nostalgia. He gets the send-off. Everyone's kind of happy. And then I think you could kind of move him in to like an academy, whatever role his children can play. Like, I don't care at that point, but I thought that the club did not do a good enough job, especially when the season was super clearly lost and the striker position, like, instead of giving up assets, like instead of giving up Lucas McNaughton, who has turned out to be quite good for CJ Sapong, you could have just simply signed Seba and he probably would have gotten just the same amount of production. And then we eliminate all of this. But I'm with Michael on, you have to, as far as I'm concerned, if you look at how BMO Field is constructed, there are cement walls everywhere. As far as I'm concerned, there are 4 murals that need to go up on 4 walls, and those 4 murals belong to Seba, Josie, Michael, and Greg, because until somebody comes along and maybe Oso ends up usurping one of them, unlikely Seba or Michael or Josie for that matter, it's probably Greg. Like, you need to honor, this club does not do a good job of honoring its best players. They have a bad relationship with Josie. They have a bad relationship with Seba. They now have a bad relationship with Michael. And it's like, there's one common denominator in all of this, and it's the club. And it's like, that's,
you're right.
I almost can't blame Seba for going about it the way he's going about it. But like, I don't like it. But at the same time, let's not pretend the club is innocent here. Like,
nature abhors a vacuum. You're right.
And they didn't even honor Greg when he came back. And I was like, that is really poor form. Like, you have got to be kidding me with that nonsense.
Yeah.
And
that was,
it's like, we're not talking about like Javier Perez. We're talking about the guy that won MLS Cup that's known as the Greg father. Like, this
Javier
club,
catching a stray.
like, I mean, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, this club seems to mess up every single exit of a big player. And the common denominator there, I hate to say it, is Bill. It happened with Bez. It happened with Greg. It happened with Seba. It happened with Josie. It's now happened with Michael. If it happens with Oso, that's more than a hand of people. Right? And like, even Richie was kind of spited by like how he left, and he did everything for the club. And so I think you look at this, and the club has to do something for him. I mean, where I live, there's a mural of Jose Bautista. Like, there's got to be something here. Obviously, you don't retire numbers, but like, you got to do something. You can't not do nothing. And for a club that wants to say, oh, we're a big club and we want to be big in Europe and we want to be taken seriously, if you look at how the clubs in Europe honor their greats, it's not like this. It's not like this.
It's an interesting conversation because, I feel that there's some truth in the fact that the way the organization works, the way that the league is set up, and the way that, I heard it with the Danny Kuverman's interview that Johan did right after he interviewed me on his podcast. The disconnect, because everybody's making different money and everybody's, it's not, the whole idea of a team is sort of sacrosanct to this idea that everybody else knows what everybody's making, and there's different tiers of classes and different levels of players, and et cetera, et cetera. And I do think that there's an opportunity for people to get too big for their britches, and the club, their response to that is what's at fault. Whether it needs to be a heavier hand to close up shop with respect to insubordination and leaks to social media. I don't have the answer, but it is an interesting thing that keeps happening.
There's a balance. It's a case-by-case basis. I mean, it's not like one perfect formula, but it is definitely become a trend and something I think needs to be ironed out here. But with that, Jeff, let's get in. Let's continue the 7 chat. Let's slowly here, as you get it ready, get into our burning question presented by Nextdoor. The burning question presented by Nextdoor. Nextdoor is the official community app of Toronto FC. It is also where you connect with the people and local businesses in your neighborhood. We've been posting the burning question each week on Nextdoor's TFC fan group, plus uploading extended show clips. So join today by downloading the app or going to nextdoor.ca. Nextdoor, where neighbors give and get help. We will get into the holiday treat a little shortly. So stay tuned for that. We have a surprise for our viewers, our listeners. But before we do that, this week's burning question presented
Before
by
we do
Next
that, how
Door
did that feel?
was
Was that your first cold read of the Next Door? No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
no,
You did it.
but we change it up. We try and keep it fresh, so it's
Yeah,
not always the
I
same.
haven't done
So
one yet. No one will let me do one yet because you both think it's going to be a disaster. But I
yeah,
am.
totally
Mm,
coincidence there, Jeff.
mm.
Totally a coincidence. Burning
I feel
question
like
is: do you?
I do one before Jeff does.
Probably. Probably.
There's a good
They're
chance
dangling that carrot.
yeah, there's a good chance Bill Manning comes on our podcast and does a read before Jeffrey P. Nesker gets in here. So burning question presented by Next Door Canada. Do you think this is the last we hear of any potential Seba TFC reunion? Just Santo from the Next Door Canada group saying, no, we'll hear about him till at least May. Then it will be either him in or riding out into the sunset. Hopefully he's in. I suspect, like everyone else, there is a upper management versus Sebastian Giovinco issue. See, the latter part of that, I don't buy into that too much. The latter upper management versus Seba issue,
Me neither.
simply because he was invited back once again, right? If the
Mhm.
upper management is still the same upper management.
Yeah.
Now, have there been, maybe coach versus player issue? Yeah, maybe there was something like that, right? But I don't necessarily buy into the fact that Bill Manning and Sebastian Giovinco's relationship is terrible. I don't think that is the case, or else I just feel like he wouldn't have been back altogether.
Exactly.
Now, is it the best? I don't think I can say it's the best, but is it the worst? No. So I don't necessarily buy into that too much. Just looking through like a couple of other answers on our Twitter page. Corey
Oh, we
Brady
got so many.
saying, until Seba officially retires, we'll have to deal with these things.
He's right.
Yeah, seriously. TFC NU saying, if he wants to help with the academy, wonderful. His playing career is done. Let it die. Dang, tell us how you really feel. But I mean, he raises a good point, right? Is Seba one day going to play a role in the academy? Or do you guys think that maybe Seba's too good for that?
I think it depends. I think it depends on if his sons play in the academy. Like Michael was always involved in the academy, and then obviously when Luca started playing for the academy, like he became more involved, got his coaching certs, like everything like that. And I think I got to be honest with you, I would have done everything imaginable if I was Bill Manning to keep Michael and Victor Vasquez for the academy, because the things that those two did for the academy that I saw with my own eyeballs, like away from the cameras, away from everything, cannot be understated. Like
Mhm.
they're the only ones. Like, and Josie
Yep.
did it too when he was there to a lesser degree. And so to lose those players from that perspective is huge. And I think when you look at it, Seba, I believe, is already involved with an academy. I want to say it's
Juve.
Juventus.
Juve. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, so I'm not even sure that there's a spot for him, but I do think that if his sons were to start playing in the TFC academy, that we could potentially see some positive sort of involvement there. But I think it's a huge lost opportunity, speaking of the academy, to lose out on both Michael and Victor. That to me is the error there.
Yeah. No, forget about Seba to the academy. Drive a bag of money back to Barcelona and get Victor Vasquez on the next plane over here.
No, I mean,
He
there
should
is some
honestly,
value
if he
for
was
sure
the
in something
technical
like that.
director, I wouldn't be upset. Like,
if they named the building after him, I would be there for the ribbon ceremony. So, yeah.
Hey, you know what? Victor Vasquez did once tell me that one day maybe he could be the coach of Toronto FC. So maybe there is some aspirations
Jeffrey
there.
just
But
cried inside of
Yeah,
happiness.
I just peed a little. Yeah. This is bad.
yeah.
But
So
in terms of Seba, like I think like he's done on the pitch.
mhm.
And like this, it's got to be like this has to be ridiculous. But I think off the pitch, this is not done. They owe him, like the club owes him because
Yeah.
of how the signing and everything went down. Like just everything in the past couple of years,
Mhm.
there's not been a proper send off for any of the four of them. And that is
Yep.
horrendous. Now, they could do a big, like, Bill Manning brought, like, all the Argos back from, like, some championship team, brought them all in the field. There was, like, a great ovation. I just happened to be there because I really didn't have anything else to do on that particular evening. So I was like, oh, why not? I'll go. If Bill Manning says, oh, we're doing a reunion and Greg's invited and Josie and Seba and Michael, I think you can do a lot there.
Well, I'm
But
going to do a lot. I'm going to lock the doors to the stadium so that they can never leave again. Once they're in there, that's it. That's it. We will drive them McDonald's to keep them alive every couple of days, but that's it. Like, they're never leaving again. We'll get them cable.
I think on the pitch we've heard the last, but I think off the pitch, there's got to be something done. And it even goes back to, like, Michael, you've been in the training academy, you've seen it. Whenever a player is traded or, like, leaves the club, they rip all the pictures down. And it's like, why? Like, those pictures with MLS Cup should remain on the wall so that...
Oh, no, that's such a foul. What? Why?
The second Seba and Josie left, those murals came down. I happened to be there recently. All Michael Bradley's pictures are down. That is a foul.
That's like the apartment of a jilted lover. That's not a soccer club. Like, that's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
Do they do it, like, immediately, like, just with extreme prejudice? Like, I hate that guy. Like,
pretty much.
What? That? Oh my! That is.
I was given
not a
one
fun
of the
fact.
photos of Seba the day after. Like, the day after I got one of the photos. And so I think when you talk about, like, welcoming them back to the club, until that club is ready to, like, even have photos on the wall of its greats, I think we're probably pretty far away. Because as far as I'm concerned, like, I know when I'm at the Allianz Arena in Munich, I walk through the halls and you see everyone from Oliver Kahn,
Stadio de
Karl-Heinz
Luge,
Rummenigge,
like it's like 400
everyone.
feet of every player that ever had a cup of coffee at Benfica. Like,
right.
honor.
And you're trying to establish this culture in Toronto FC, get this culture, this winning culture back. They should have to look at those photos every day and
That's
be
the
like,
worst
that's
thing
what
I've
we're
ever heard.
striving to.
That's one of the worst things I've ever heard. That's going to be hard to come back from. Like, that's, I mean, think of the what's the stadium in Brazil, the Maracana, where you know, you're inundated with team pictures from the 18th century. You know what I mean? Just like no, we're not building. Remember why we won? We had those parts in the trophy case that everybody had to walk by and see the empty.
Those are still there.
Spots. So we have empty shelves and no pictures. Like, what is this? This is like a divorced dad's condo. Like, this is a sad, like Stouffer's Hungry Man dinners kind of. This is Milhouse's dad's house. Like, this is
I don't mind.
Cool.
I will say this. I don't mind if you take down, like, Crescido's photos, or, like, if you haven't won or had success with the club, your photos can go elsewhere. When you're taking down a mural of the MLS Cup winning team because those players left, like, what are we doing here?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I ruined
let's spice it up though. Let's get these vibes back. Let's do our little holiday treat that we had for our listeners, for our viewers. Just to sum it up, is that the last we hear of Sebastian Giovinco as a player at Toronto FC. I mean, he's not technically retired yet, so I mean, I thought the last time would have been the last time, but you never know. Let's keep an ear out for Seba. Let's see what's next. Maybe it is retirement officially.
Paddleball.
Certainly seems.
I hear paddleball and espressos. That's my guess.
Oh, he's definitely going. He's definitely going. So now, like I said, we have a holiday treat for you. Our friends at Nextdoor, once again, they are playing TFC Santa this year by providing Toronto Till I Die with what we've dubbed this whole season as the Vibes Kit, or officially the Energy Kit. So this week we'll be running a contest to give away the kit to one lucky listener. Now, all you need to do, it's really simple, and I'm sure most people listening live to this have done this already. You just need to subscribe to the TTID YouTube channel and join the Toronto FC fans group on Nextdoor for a chance to win. So a winner will be randomly drawn, and we'll announce the winner on next week's year-end show. Sound good? Sound like a
Damn,
plan?
I
Sounds
wanted
great.
that. Now I was on the show today, so I can't even enter the contest.
Oh no, no,
Nope.
no, no. You're
Nope.
eligible. You're eligible.
Oh,
I'm putting myself
yeah,
there. What do
yeah.
you mean? I'm eligible too.
I already have one.
No, just
I already
kidding.
have one, and I love it. It's
Excuse me.
fantastic. Mm.
What?
Yeah, I have one.
Do you have a
We're
plan
getting
on the back?
shafted, Michael. The Richmond Hill
No,
kids. We be
no,
getting
they won't.
shafted.
They will not give me Quayo on the back. I want Quayo on the back so badly, but I cannot source the yellow letters anywhere.
Ah,
Yeah,
that seems like
Yeah.
a you problem.
goals.
So that's it. Yeah, we'll be giving out a energy kit
Mm,
next week's show. Subscribe
Yeah.
to the YouTube channel
yeah,
and
but actually, they're scratch and dent Insigne jerseys and a few Bernadeschi's. We've got a whole bunch to give away. Yeah.
I actually don't know if there's going to be a name on the back of this one. Stay tuned for that. There might be, there might not be. Regardless,
There
you
better
guys,
not
one of
be.
you lucky viewers, lucky listeners, will end up one jersey happier this holiday season. So stay tuned for that. On that note, thank you everyone for tuning in to another Toronto Till I
What just
Die
happened?
episode.
What did I do?
Holiday Jeff is in full spirit over here.
What is
Just a
going on?
quick programming reminder: next week it will be our year-end show, end of year show previewing the 2024 MLS Super Draft, where TFC had the #1 overall pick. We'll also finally, I'm surprised this hasn't
Don't say-
happened yet, but we'll finally finish our over-unders.
Yeah. Oh my
We're
god,
not going to finish.
it's been a while. Yeah, we're totally going to do it.
Okay, we're going to
Absolutely, we
finish our
have to.
over-unders and provide our key TFC moments for 2023. Spoiler, there was not too many.
Are they the
Also,
bad moments or?
I want it to be a good
vibe
vibe show, so let's try and keep it somewhat positive.
I'm going for vibes.
It's the end of year.
Positive vibe.
But also remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel and join the Next Door Toronto FC fans group for your chance to win that energy kit. On behalf of Jeffrey P. Nesker, our special guest Rachel Dory, I am Michael Singh, and we will see you next week for that end of year special.
And wait, and baby, I'm TFC till I die.